You ready? This is me tonight. Well, Brett, where are you? Yeah. You think I'm not looking? You think I don't count? We got like 27 chairs here, 4 people. See a lot of people out tonight. It's probably a opening season for turkey. That's bow season opening or whatever. Well, let's pray. Father, we just thank you, praise you for your son, Jesus, Lord. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for giving us the Bible, letting us be able to freely open it, do whatever we want here in this country, at least for the next couple of weeks. But I pray for those folks that aren't feeling good tonight that feel better. All the prayers that have been offered up will answer them according to perfect will. You with me tonight, give me the words to say, because Lord, this is a tough book for me. But we'll see. Lord, just be with us tonight. Open up our hearts and minds to not only hear what you have to say, but do it as well. I pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Song of Solomon. Yeah. To say that's not the key to the Bible. It's just not. It's a poem. It's a poem written by a man for a very specific purpose. So, I mean, literally, it's a love story. It's a love letter. Okay, so it's written from a man to a woman. That is the main purpose of this book. It's designed to impress the woman. And what's weird about it is that he also records the reaction of the woman. He calls her the Shulamite. Now, figure out what a Shulamite is. You don't know what a Shulamite is. The internet thinks it's a Shulamite, but it's spelled differently. So I don't know. Shulamite, Shunammite, Shudavite, Mighty Mite. I don't know. She's a Shulamite. No place called Shulam that I can find. If there is, correct me. I'll take it. There's a lot of words written about a place called Shunam, Shunammite woman. That they say this is the same thing, not the same woman, but same place. I don't know. Anybody got anything on that? Gregg, you ever heard of a place called Shulam? Yeah, it's just like everything I've tried to read up on it is, this is Shunam, and they just call it Shulam. I'm like, tomato, but it's smelled with a L. I don't know. It's a very intimate book. It's a very, very intimate book. It's so intimate that our 2 of the big-time, quote-unquote, church fathers banned it from being read by anybody under the age of 30. Jerome and Origen said it shouldn't be read by anyone under 30. Why 30? I don't know, but today they'd show it to you in the first grade. But at any rate, say this. Imagine a alleged church father banning the words of the Bible to anybody. Okay, there's a thought. So a lot of people have a lot of ideas about the meaning of the book, and some people believe it's the key to the whole Bible. I don't. I can't make it that. I could machinate through it and make it that. I've got a lot of opinions about it, but then everybody's got opinions. Everybody's got a rear end too. So it's a book. It's in the Bible. It's preserved by God. It's for us to read. It's for our learning. It's profitable for doctrine, reproof, correction. But sometimes the thing is what it is. It's just a book. It's a story. It's kind of mysterious. Once you stop taking it at face value, I mean, it's just a letter from a man to a woman. It's a poem. It's a love letter. Right? But it's hard to find the hidden meanings in it because there's a lot of things that make you think of things. There's a lot of passages that say, oh, wow, I mean, that sure looks like the bride of Christ. That sure looks like the church. But there's just no evidence to support it other than it sure looks that way. And once we get into that, you're into the allegorical method of Bible interpretation, and I'm not good at that because it's wrong. But I'm sure there's more than I'll ever dig out of it. And I've been taught a lot about it, and I'll not say I've been taught wrong. I've just been taught different. So I feel that this is just a book. It is what it is. If you take any book and try to allegorize it, you can make it be the meaning of life. You take a Nancy Drew book and allegorize it enough, make that a treatise on anything. If you try hard enough, if you work hard enough, put something there that isn't there, you can make it mean anything. The Bible says a virtuous woman is hard to find. Maybe like 1 in 1,000. Solomon had 1,000 wives, and maybe he found one virtuous woman in the whole crowd. And he may be writing to her. He's writing to somebody. It's a book written by Solomon, for sure. It's likely that it's a letter to a virtuous woman that he found. I've been taught by some that it's written to the Queen of Sheba. That's great. If it's true, great. No evidence to support that. Zero. Might as well have been the Queen of East LA for all the Bible says about who this woman is. It's the woman. Solomon is the writer. That's pretty evident. There's no evidence that could tell me that the woman isn't Nancy Drew. It's just a woman. It's been a frustrating book. There's a Latin phrase. It's called res ipsa loquitur. The thing stands for itself. It's a law phrase. Heard it, a guy I know went to no, I guess I still don't know him unless he's dead. He went to law school. Res ipsa loquitur means the thing stands for. Sometimes the book's just what a book is. It's just a book. It's just a letter from a man to a woman. Is there traces of our relationship with Christ? Yeah, there's pictures of it. Yeah, there should be an intimate, close relationship between us and Christ. Yes. Is the bride in this book the bride of Christ? There's no evidence to say that it is. So it is what it is. The thing stands for itself. That's the best I could do with it. So we're done. We'll crawl our heads. We're out here. I'll just go around. No. There's plenty of passages that have double, triple applications, meanings, but most of the time when I read my Bible, it just stands for itself. It is what it is, and it reminds me of things, and it shows me. Remember, the Old Testament is physical pictures of spiritual principles. So these physical pictures that were being painted in this book must be showing us spiritual principles. But I stopped short of taking it too far and trying to make it the key to anything. It's another book. It's an important book. Important enough to be included in 66 of the writings. They're preserved, pure, and left for us to understand the best we can today. But sometimes we're just not going to understand the whole Bible. Nobody can understand the whole Bible. I will never understand the Bible. Anyone I ever met that pretended to didn't. They just pretended to better than I. I'm not even pretending. I don't understand the whole Bible. This book is the least understood book that I've ever read in the Bible. So what I'll do with it is I'll outline it for you, at least tell you who's talking. A little bit about what they might be saying and what it reminded me of when I read the book. Res ipsa loquitur. The thing stands for itself. The Bible's full of these things that have double and triple applications and meanings and secret this and not secret. I mean, there's plenty of prophecy. Prophecy's great right until it breaks down. So, like, prophecy's great until you find out, wait a minute, that actually happened in history 1,000 years ago. And then it's a type, it's a picture of something that's going to happen again. That's great. But prophecy describes current events as well as future events, as well as past events. Depending on how much you stretch the prophecy, it can apply to any event. That's what we've got. You know, people out there, like, what was it, 1984 was supposed to be the end of the world. I think that was Ruckman himself. I think it was 84. And then there was, like, what was it, 90-something on the 21st of May. It was supposed to end. The cult was in Times Square. They're all surrounded by a bunch of people going, well, we're still here. What do you got to say? Like, it was like, it's on YouTube. You can see it. It's hilarious. I try not to get caught up. I mean, I'm not going to badmouth the deeper meanings of Bible because they're important. We should know them. But some people get caught too much in that. And that's all that's important. I went to Joplin, Missouri. We got invited to preach down there. They wanted us to preach on end time prophecy. Okay. But there isn't any prophet in the Bible. So he's preaching an end time prophecy for a group of people in Nineveh. Yeah. But when we go for the deeper things, sometimes we miss the things that God wanted his kids to know, little children to know. I think there's plenty of things to learn in the Song of Solomon that a child of God ought to know about and live. And is there deeper things that I'll touch on? Absolutely. I won't touch on them. I'm not interested to that level at this point in those deeper things. But I can say that everything I've read and everything I've heard have taken this book to places where I would never take it. So I won't. So I'll take it where I take it. So what do we know about the book? It's written by Solomon, or at a minimum, it's Solomon's word. If you look at Song of Solomon 1 and 2, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon. So it's definitely Solomon's son, right? In verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. There's something, it says there. Okay, so scholars all disagree on the story. And they say things like this. The groom is God, the bride's Israel. Solomon, and whoever the bride is, it's this virtuous woman that he said you would find. Some say there's church, that the bride is the church, and the king here is Christ, but it's Solomon. I mean, pictures of it, yeah. Similarities, yeah. Lessons to learn, yeah. Practical applications of our relationship with Christ, absolutely. I mean, everything I've read on it, none of them agree. So I wonder if maybe man just can't understand everything in the Bible every time you open it up. But there's always going to be an application in the Bible that you can't understand, or God was an idiot. That's not true. There's something in this book that you can understand. Every book has something for every human that ever lived. And this one does too. Some teach that the allegory here is that the bride is wisdom herself. Well, it's not even a real woman. It's pretty specific words in this book to be a concept, okay? I don't think wisdom has body parts that are described in this book. This is a book written by a man to a woman with the expressed purpose of impressing her. Or I just don't know how to read. The book just stands so far out there by itself. It just stands for itself. So, it has three primary characters. You got the bride. You pick who you want that to represent. At the beginning of the book, she isn't a bride. There's that. Okay. Song of Solomon 1:2 says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Solomon's song, written by Solomon or someone else wrote it for him, but this is the bride speaking, right? So this is the future bride speaking. And it goes in and out, in and out. Sometimes it's the bride, sometimes it's the king, sometimes it's the maidens. And then one commentary thinks at one point it's the brothers. There's absolutely not one scintilla of evidence to say that the speaker in that point, I'll point out later, is male or female. The only thing that you have is the pattern throughout the entire book of the bride, the daughters, and the king speaking. And then suddenly, I go, this is obviously the brothers. Okay, it's great. You found some new thing in the Bible and you impressed your congregation. I can't impress you. You all know who I am. This is what the book taught me. So it's written by Solomon, or someone wrote it for him, but they're his words. Thing stands for itself. And then this woman who's portrayed in this book is portrayed as a godly woman, inwardly and outwardly. So as you read it, you can see inwardly and outwardly the woman's a godly woman. So if you want to tie that to the bride of Christ, great. I would just make it practically for inspiration. I would document this. But since the church was an absolute, unadulterated, complete, total mystery to these people, I'm not sure how you could make it that. So, let's see. And she meets all the requirements of being that virtuous woman that we read about in Proverbs 3. So there's that. So she does, this is a virtuous woman. She could be whoever that virtuous woman was. It could have been, I guess it was, one of Solomon's 1,000 women in his life. And that old adage that, a virtuous woman is one in 1,000. Well, the virtuous woman, whoever that is in this book, says that Solomon, the king, is like 1 in 10,000. So how is that God? Because God's 1 in a bazillion. He's unique. So he's not 1 in 10,000, right? So you got to be really careful when you tie God into a box and say, you are this way, God. If you fit into this box, this size, then you have to deal with that stuff. So I just think that I'm about how to better my life, how to practically live a better Christian life. And whoever this woman is, the writer really, really likes her a lot. So then you have, so who is that? First the bride or the maiden, the Shulamite, the girl from Shunem. Okay, then you have the daughters. You find them in chapter 1, verse 5. Sorry, not correct. You have the daughters, not in chapter 1. You're going to see these throughout. They're not the bride, but they're still important. They're just not the bride. They're infatuated with the bridegroom, the king. They really want to know more about him, but they don't desire the relationship that the maiden does. They know where he is. They point him out. They help the bride find him when she can't. And they're important to the story in some way that we can see and read the book. So you can see this separate character, the daughters. You see these words, the daughters. Okay? But you'll see that where the maiden is concerned with the physical and spiritual needs of herself and the king, the daughters seem to be more concerned only with the physical things. And so if you want to allegorize that and call them the church, you can see parallels. There's people within the body of Christ that have a more intimate, close relationship with God, Christ, than others. You can do that. Inspiration. No. I'm giving you permission. That's so when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this book as a relationship manual. How is my relationship with Christ? Am I more concerned with the physical things of my own world and what he can do for me? Or I am more concerned with the physical things, spiritual things that he wants me to do and how they affect me spiritually? Daughters care about the bridegroom, but they are not fully devoted to him, and he's not fully devoted to them. So how's that going? God died for us. I guess that was about as devoted as you can get. So I'm really careful when I try to buy. I really hate putting God in a box because he always breaks out and I look like an idiot. So there. Then the third character is the king, Solomon. He's the bridegroom. He's a picture of Christ. He's a type of Christ. He's a type of the Antichrist. So now we got, okay, if it's God, this character is a type of the Antichrist. And you have to deal with that now. So like, I have trouble with that. So I have trouble with going in and out of the allegory and trying to make total sense of a book that no one's ever made sense of. I've read Ruckman's ideas on it. I've heard Bob Alexander's ideas on it, Dan Schmidt's ideas on it, Pete Nugent's ideas on it, Bob Gregg's, J. Vernon McGee's, Fawcett, Brown, and what's his name? Everybody I can find on the internet, and none of them agree on what it is. None of them agree. Not one of them. They don't even agree who's talking when. So take that for what you will. The king is devoted to the maiden, but not to the daughters. But there's plenty of moments in there where you can say, okay, if that is a type of God, if this is Solomon being a picture of God, and the maiden and the daughters are a picture of the church, what can I do with that from my relationship standpoint? What can I learn from them and change and modify and make better my relationship with Christ? I think that's valid. For me, that's how I'm doing it. Okay? So what we can learn from the book, get an idea of what a relationship between a husband and wife ought to be. You could get an example of how God wanted to view Israel. Good. There's some parallels with Christ and the church, right? I mean, at least in type, at least my Bible was written for me, even if it wasn't written to me. So there's something in it. God wanted me to learn something out of the book. What it is pretty elusive, but if it's nothing more than the relationship I'm supposed to have with him, what can I learn about this book to improve my relationship with Christ? You can gather a perspective on how our relationship should be between us and other Christians from this book. The maidens, maid, the daughters of the maiden have a relationship with each other that seems caring and proper and correct. And this book is about our relationship. If it's about our relationship with Christ, it's about a spiritual relationship with Christ. It's not sexual. The book is sexual in nature. That ain't what this is about. The Old Testament is physical pictures of spiritual principles we find in the New Testament. So there. So how do you understand the book? You can't. The first thing you should understand about the book is you will never fully understand the book. Anybody that says they do, don't. It's just as simple as that. I mean, I haven't met the person that understands the book, completely understands the book. There are some things you can keep in mind. Who's speaking? I'm going to attempt to lay out my idea, and I've stolen ideas. Who's speaking and when through each chapter. So at least you can know if it's the bride, the daughter, or the king speaking. Because there's controversy over that. The other thing you want to do is you want to know what words mean. Words matter. Okay? I want to read you a passage. You tell me the first thing you think about when I read this passage. My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved from it. What do you think? Right? That is not what it said, though, right? So when you read the book, be aware of the colloquialisms that are going on in the book. Yeah, that's bam. That is not what happened there. So it's an odd book, right? I mean, it's a book. It's a poetry book. It's not what we think. What are vowels? When I think of vowels, I think of something else. But that is not the reaction the guy was looking for when he wrote the love letter. Really, I'm out of here. Think pictures and ideas, not absolutes or doctrines. This is a book written in the Old Testament. It's not written to you. It's written for you. Romans 15:4 says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope." Hebrews 10:1, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope." A lot of commonality. Because I actually cut and pasted the same stupid thing twice, didn't I? I have to look up Hebrews 10:1. Yeah, for the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of things, can never with those sacrifices which they offer year by year. Never mind. That's a bad reference. This is an Old Testament story. It's a physical picture of spiritual principles God's trying to teach us. It's a very literal book. Okay, it's literally a poem. It's literally a letter, literally written between a man and a woman, from a man to a woman. So now, who's talking and when? So in chapter 1, verses 2, 1 is just an introduction. Right? In chapter 1, verse 2 through chapter 4, you have the bride and the daughters, okay, talking. You got the bride talking in verse 2, 3. And then you have the daughters talking in verse 4. And you see, "We will run after thee, the king hath brought." Okay, we see "we," think daughters. We see, "Let him kiss me." The daughters don't want that relationship with him. The woman does, okay? Then in chapter 1, verse 5 through 7, you have the bride. Before I get there, think about the bride and the daughters. They're in the same group, but the bride breaks out of that crowd and wants something more. She wants more. It's like just like every church you're in, there's going to be people that want a deeper relationship with Christ than others. They do more, they read more, they study more, they serve more, they go to church more. They just want a deeper relationship with Christ than all the other people in the church. It's always going to be that way. It always will be. That was that 80-20 rule. 20% of people do 80% of the work, or whatever it is. I'm sure there's different statistics on it, but most people don't want that relationship that this Shulamite does. So in chapter 1, verse 5 through 7, you have the bride talking. And she's talking in more personal terms of devotion than we hear the daughters talk. If you look in verse 5 through 7, "I am black." Well, now we know what she looks like. "But comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem." She's talking to the bride, to the daughters. "As the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of thy companions?" She's really talking personal. Now remember, the daughters are close, but they don't want the same relationship that she wants, the bride, future bride. Okay. She gives a description of herself. Twice, she is black. I'm just going to go with what the Bible says. She's black. Because I grew up watching Blue-Eyed Surfer Jesus with the feather bang on the wall doing this. Flicking that hair back like every surfer dude that I grew up with in the 70s. And that's not what Jesus looked like. Like me. He's dark. Seems to me that the African race has a more prominent role in the Bible than the great preachers of the Philadelphian church period. You know, the church period of slavery. I have a problem with glorifying like a previous generation as much as I do blaming all the ills of society on the generation that I raised. What's that problem with that? We're just bad. People just went over the cliff and we just keep going down. You got this black woman here, you got a black Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8 playing very important, prominent roles in the Bible, and somehow society has relegated black people to the ash heap of history. Slogans don't work. The bridegroom starts to talk in chapter 1, verse 8 through 10. And if thou know not, O thou fairest among women. So he's talking to the bride, fairest among women. She's among many, but she's the fairest to him. Go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tent. I have compared thee, O love, to a company of horses. And Pharaoh's child. This guy's romantic. Remind me of horses. Thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, thy neck with chains of gold. O thou fairest of women. Definitely not the daughters. This is the bridegroom talking, and he is very, very romantic in comparing her to a herd of horses. He does it more than once. So it must be good. I'll bet when he did that, her bowels moved for him. Well, there's that. So then, in chapter 1, verse 11, the daughters talk. And you see this here. We will make thee borders of gold. We. There's daughters, okay? Surprised that one commentator didn't say, well, that must be the brothers. So, but it's saying something about the daughters. They're not bad. They're just not bride. They're not outsiders. They're insiders. They're not fools. They're in there. They're with them. We will make thee borders of gold with studs of silver. They're not bad. They want to do stuff. They want to work. They're involved in the society around the bride, the bridegroom. They're not mixed multitude. They're not outer camp. They're right there in there. There's a difference between them and the bride. I'm beating the same horse. They're rejoicing in the bridegroom, but they don't have that extra desire for the intimate relationship that the bride has. And that's cool for them. So if you want to make a parallel in the church, like I said, not everyone in the church desires the same level of relationship with the Bible. Not everyone desires the same level of relationship with each other. Not everyone desires the same level of ministry. Not everyone wants it. That's just the way it is. That's the way we are. We should want it. Yeah, we should, but we don't. There's some people in church for the wrong reasons, and they're good people. They're just not there for the right reasons. There's people that are there for the right reasons that know that they should do more and don't do it because they don't want to commit to the time and effort and sacrifice of time and things and fun that they want to do. And that's okay. That's where they are. They're in their place, right? They're satisfied with a minimum of effort. They do the work. They're the Marthas. Marthas do the work. Everybody knows that from the Handmaid's Tale. Marthas do the work. You got Martha, Mary, Lazarus in that story. Someone has to do the work. And they do work. But they're not Marys, whatever that is. Okay? There's nothing technically wrong with them. But the bride, this Shulamite, represents the minority of people within the body of Christ. This bride could represent, it gives me the feeling of representative of people within the church that want more of their relationship with God. Okay. Chapter 1, verse 12 through 14, you have the bride talking. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of camphor in the vineyards of Engedi. Boy, that must mean something really cool, but that's the bride talking. When you see the word beloved, it's usually the bride talking to the bridegroom. Not always. He uses the same word. In verse 15, you got the bridegroom, you got the king talking. Okay? Verse 15, behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair, thou hast dove eyes. That's the first of 3 times you're going to hear the exact same thing in this book. Must be something there. I don't know what it is, but he definitely thinks she's fair, whatever that means. This guy really likes this woman. He's very devoted to her. You might say she's the apple of his eye. There's something special about this woman. 3 different verses in this book say exactly the same thing. Thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair, thou hast dove eyes. Look it up. He already wrote in verse 8, O thou fairest. So there's something about this fair that's important. I didn't study it out. But it's there. You look in verse 16, thou art fair. This is the bride talking. Turnabout's fair play. Sometimes when God says something to you, he'd like you to hear you say back, like Bible memorization, maybe. It just occurs to me. I'm trying to make it practical for me. Turnabout's fair play. It's nice to hear nice things from each other, even if the other person just said it to you. I'm reading my Bible, I see a verse there, I'm like, maybe I should memorize that. Wouldn't God be pleased to hear that? When we sent you to Awana, and would you do 48 verses that night? I was pleased, I'll tell you that. I think God was pleased. But whatever, right? Chapter 2. 2 verse 1. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. Bob, what is the lily? And he said it was the bride. And like, I made a face. And he asked me why I made a face. I said, well, because this, that, and the other. And he goes, oh, yeah, I thought about it like that. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think that's the bride talking. So I'm saying it's the bride. I can give you some background on that. I think I'll get to it. Back in California, in my college and career class, I had this girl. I can't remember her name, but I liked her. She sang. You remember her? She sang. Young girl, probably 18, 19, maybe 17 years old. And somehow I was doing a study on the names of God. And it's like, she's like, what's the big deal? He's also the lily of the valley. And it just threw me for a minute. And I was so stunned by, she must have been having a bad day because it was totally uncharacteristic of her. But she backed up her challenge by saying, well, we sing the song Lily of the Valley. It says, I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He's the lily of the valley, and him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. Great. Next week, we sang a song, I'd rather have Jesus. At church, the next week, we sang a song, I'd rather have Jesus. It reads this. He is fairer than the lilies, rarest blood. Look, he's sweeter than the honey from out of the comb. The next Sunday, in the class, I approached her right after my college and career class, and I showed her that. And to give her credit, she goes, you know what? I never really thought about that. I was just told that. Like, you need to get from the Bible what God tells you to get from the Bible. Don't get it from me. Don't get it from a hymnal. Those aren't inspired. Those hymns are not inspired. Those hymns are hymns. They have a lot of Bible verses in it. But, there's billions of people out there singing these 2 songs that never thought a second thought about it. One week he's the lily, and the next week he's fairer than the lily. And it's all okay because we don't care. The bride would think something about it. The bride would say, wait a minute, he's fairer than the lily. I'm the freaking lily. I'm the lily. Anyway. The bridegroom starts talking in verse 2. Here's why I think I'm right. As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. I'm the lily's bride. She's among the thorns. The thorns are the daughters. She comes out from them. Chapter 2, verses 4 through 6, you got the bride talking. You brought me to the banquet, the banquering house. And his banner over me was love. Stay me with flagons, comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love. She's love sick. Oh, yeah. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. She's talking to the daughters. So she's telling her friends about this guy she met, who has a lot of characteristics of Christ, a lot of characteristics of God. I mean, this is a Jewish book, so a Jewish king. So she's witnessing to them. She's telling them what he's done for her. In verse 4, he brought me to the banquet. He brought me something. His love for me was known. His banner. He made his love for me known. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. See, there's parallels here. I mean, there's something to learn here about God. If nothing else, there's definitely things in here. He took her somewhere. His banner's a sign of that love. His love was known through her. She's witnessing to the daughters. And then in verse 7 through 16, she talks more, okay? And she continues her speech about the bridegroom. She's telling whoever will listen. Verse 8, he talks to me. He talks to me. Verse 8, the voice of my beloved, the Holy One. He's talking to her. This is what the guy said to me. This is what the Bible said to me. This is what God showed me in the Bible. This is me. This is you talking to someone about what God has shown me in the Bible. Verse 10. My beloved spake and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one. Oh, there's that word again. And come away. Oh, boy. The commentators go nuts and say that's the rapture. Great. Too bad there's no such thing as a church to be raptured at this point in time. But okay, great. Some new thing, something that sets me apart. We ever get a church building, I'm going to have smoke machines installed. I'm going to have the lights go. I'm going to have like the buzz, like at the beginning of the TMX movies, and the whole place is going to vibrate. I'm just not that special. Verse 13, there's a fig tree. So I'm going to make parallels to Israel. Do that. This is a fruitful fig tree. Maybe there's a millennial context or something. Okay. Then in verse 17, you got the bride talking to the bridegroom directly. Until the day break, when shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, be thou like a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of Bethel. That's the bride speaking directly to him, showing the importance of a two-way relationship between husband and wife. Or at least between a man and a woman in some sort of relationship. How well would your relationship go if you never spoke? Or if one of you always talked and the other one didn't? Or if one of you always talked and the other one didn't listen? Or the one would say, this is what I need, and you wouldn't do it. Like, how is that going to go? Okay, chapter 3. You got the bride talking from verse 1 through 11. I'll read the first 3 verses. By night on my bed I saw him whom my soul loveth. I saw him, but I found him not. I will rise now and go about the city in the streets and in the broad ways. I will seek him whom my soul loveth. I saw him, but I found him not. The watchmen that go about the city found me, to whom I said, saw ye him whom my soul loveth? There's a lot of things that remind me of things. Like there's words that remind me of things I read in the New Testament. So my brain wants to go, that's this. Here's my cross-reference, and therefore the doctrine is this and that and the other thing. But all it's doing is telling me about a relationship. And they may not have anything to do with the story. That reminded me of John 20. Why? Because it says, then the disciples went away into their own house. That's all. It was dark. It was a dark time. After the resurrection of Jesus Christ, it was a very dark time on earth. The Son of God is dead, right? He's in a tomb. He's dead for 3 days. Gone for 3 days, right? Rises on the 3rd day. And she says, by night on my bed. So there's darkness. This is how my thought process works. I'm insane, so it's cool. Don't worry about it. Christ was laid in a tomb. The door was shut. It was dark. And they rolled away that rock, They saw an empty tomb. And John 20:10 says, then the disciples went away again unto their own home. But in verse 11 of chapter 20, this is what reminded me. This is the story it reminded me. John chapter 20, verse 11 through 13. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. As she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head, the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? And she said unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord. And here it is, and I know not where they've laid him. She doesn't know where the Lord is. This woman's out there looking for her beloved. She doesn't know where he is. That's it. That's why I went there. And now I can write a commentary and put it on the internet and be famous. It's reminding me of other things. That Mary wanted a relationship with God. She didn't know where he was. That bummed her out. She wasn't in contact with him, and that made her feel bad. Same thing about this bride here. She wasn't in contact with her beloved, and she was not happy about it. She's distressed. She doesn't know where the object of her love is. And Mary is distressed because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they've laid him. Okay? I'm not saying that this is a picture of the empty tomb. I'm just saying this is where my brain, and if nothing else, it got me interested in another part of the Bible. Why? Because I'd actually read that part of the Bible, and I made that part of the Bible mean something to me. Now I'm able to weave that fabric a little deeper. Just me. Passages like this can pique our curiosity, and it should. But we have to have been to these places before, or there's no connection. But in any case, we should be as concerned as the bride and Mary are about where the object of our faith is at any given moment, or better yet, where we are in the eyes of the object of our faith. So chapter 4 comes along. In the first 15 verses, you got the bridegroom talking. In verse 1, he says, Behold, there we go. Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove eyes within thy locks. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear in the... Talk about romantic. Today you remind me of goats. Goats are gross. She liked it. So, whatever. I am believing that this chapter is where the consummation of marriage takes place. And I have notes in my Bible. It's church bride right there. Chapter 4. It says it right there. So, at some point, that's what I thought it was. Right next to it says Christ speaks. I have no evidence to back that up other than there's a note. But let's be honest with you, I've changed. Chapter 5, verse 2 through 8, we have the bride talking. She says in verse 2, It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh. Oh, wait. Behold, he stands at the door and knocks, right? I mean, you can go there. It's great. You can go there. But I wouldn't go there that hard. I'd just go there because I read that part of the Bible and I made a connection, right? Look what happened. Yeah, this that verse again. Look at verse 4, chapter 5, verse 4. Now, I'm on chapter 5, 5, 4. My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door. My bowels were moved. There it was. Someone knocking on the other side of the door. What did I think about? Well, that's anything. Knock, right? Somehow the happy couple are on opposite sides of the door. So what does that mean? You should think about it. I don't know. It means something, but it doesn't have to mean. Not everything has to tie something to something else. To tie something. You cannot understand the Bible completely. You can understand it exactly as much as God wants you to. And then someday you get the mind of Christ and you understand the whole thing. It doesn't obfuscate our responsibility to dig in and know more. One's knocking and the other one's moving the bowels. So, anyways. Chapter 5, verses 8 through 9, the daughters start talking. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem. Somebody speaking. Yeah, she's speaking. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him that I am sick of love. And now they start talking in verse 9. What is thy beloved more than another beloved? O thou fairest among women. What is thy beloved more than another beloved? if thou dost charge us, so charge us. The bride tells the daughter, hey, look, if you see Solly Boy, let me know. You need to know where he is. If you see him, tell me where he is. And I'm like, who is this guy? How is he any different than any other guy out there? It's raining men around here. Why are you so concerned with this one guy? That's the difference between the daughters and the bride. She knows who this guy is. She wants this relationship with him. She wants a close relationship with him. They're infatuated with him, but when it really comes down to it, why are you so obsessed with this guy? Why are you so interested in your Bible? That's the way I have a relationship with my Savior, the way I'm supposed to. This book is telling us that we should have that intimate relationship with him. They say basically in verse 9, what's so special about him? He's good looking. Oh, that, but hey, there's plenty of men out here. Go get another one. Oh, spiritual fornication. I mean, it takes it all kinds of places, right? My opinion that the consummation took place already. But in verses 10 through 16, the bride starts talking again, and she lays in. She doesn't lay in it. She goes, that is why. This is what's special about it. She knows more than just superficial knowledge about this guy. So when someone says, how can I accept something in the future? Then you're ready, right? There's a whole lot of application in this book. She's telling the daughters all about it. Who have we told about the object of our faith lately? And in what context did you describe it? Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. Great. What about it? What's so special about this Jesus? Well, you say, he died on the cross. He sings songs about it. What kind of this girl had a deep knowledge of who this guy was. So when someone questioned her and said, what's so special about this guy? They answer the question. So you learn something there. Is there a special feeling when we describe Christ, or is it just, I go to church? I do that Jesus thing. Chapter 6. The daughters of Jesus. Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest? Now, this you're thinking, everybody thinks this girl's fair. She's got a testimony. Everyone, the daughters think she is. Solomon thinks she is, and she is fair. O thou fairest among women. Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? Now, they want to know more about this guy, based on what she just said. Church. Closely. These daughters are a strange group. In the very last chapter, they're going, what's so special about this dude? Then she tells them what's special about you. They say, let's go find him together. And they can find him together, but they're not going to, they still won't. Because this is literally a story of a man in love with a woman who's in love with a man. The bride, the daughters can't, because it's Solomon. But notice how the bride, look in verse 2 through 3. My beloved has gone down into his garden, to the bed of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather himself. To gather himself. Isn't that what it says in your King James Bible? To gather himself, because he's the lily of the valley, right? To gather himself. Oh, well, Bob, it doesn't say lily, it says lilies. I've heard that one. Okay. We go with that. So he's going to gather lilies. So the point I'm making is she didn't write the daughters off. When they were questioning her, saying, who's this guy? Just go get another one. Oh, well, you just idiot. You don't care about King James Bible. You don't really, you were never really in the, she never did the things that Christians do. She just told them who he was. Very specifically, very properly laid out who this guy was, and now they want to know more. When they say, where is he? She told them exactly where he was. She's not mad. She's telling them everything they want to know. When I was being witnessed to about Jesus Christ, I wasn't as kind as the daughters. Not kind at all. And these people didn't write me off. Those 3 people witnessed to me over and over again over years. The 3 people that witnessed to me about Jesus Christ never turned away from me in my repugnant responses to their witness. bride's teaching us something that those people probably never did or were taught. Bride. But the picture, bride, could have written me off. Mixed multitude, don't be lost, don't hell, get out of here. No, cast your pearls before swine, and all those slogans that we throw out, but they didn't. So here I am today, saved on my way to heaven, not going to hell, because those people looked at me as an opportunity rather than a trophy. Or, now, I think it can be a trophy either way. Oh, that guy we really showed him the world. But you'll see again someday in the judgment seat of Christ. Chapter 6, verse 4 through 10 is the bridegroom talking. Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. Wow, this guy is romantic. You're terrible. You look like a city. You're spread out like a city. I'm just telling you right now. You got streets and lines everywhere. I don't know. You can study these things out. People say they're all symbolic of everything. I'll just stick with what I can do with it. I can't eat end time prophecy. I mean, it's important, and we should know it, but I can't eat it. It doesn't make me better. I already know the world's going to end. I'm not going to do well for judgment seat of Christ. What more do I need? Okay. And then she goes on to Jerusalem. It's my favorite one. Verse 11. This is the bride talking. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Oh. I was in the wrong. Yeah. I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Wherever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Aminadab. She goes to Southern California, the land of fruits and nuts. And then the daughters talk, and the daughters talk, and the bride talks in verse 13. The daughters start in verse 13, the beginning. Return, O Shulamite. Return, that we may look upon thee. They want to hang out with her. There's something about this woman, her testimony. They want to be around her. Her closeness to the object of her love, and her testimony makes her attractive to these people. And then the bride talks at the end of verse 13. What will you see in the Shulamite? As it were, the company of two armies. I have no idea what that means. But she asked me a question. I think she answers it. If you hang out with me, you will see the company of two armies. Bridegroom talks in chapter 7, verse 1 through 9. Chapter 7, verse 1. How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O princess daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. There you go with feet again, right? The only part of any body in the Bible that is called beautiful. Song of Solomon 7:1, Isaiah 52 verse 7, and Romans 10:15. Okay. Then you got the bride talking, starting in verse 10. Chapter 7, verse 10. Chapter 7, verse 10. I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. Verse 11. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranate bud forth, and I will give thee my loves. I am my beloved's, and his desires toward me. This is a picture in a real way of a two-way personal relationship. I am his. I am his, but is he not? I ask myself the question, like, really? He bought me. Do I act like it? Do I act like he owns me, or do I act like I own me and I lend myself to him every once in a while? It suits me. She's in it all the way because he's in it all the way. We love him because he first loved us. It's got to be that way. But that's the reason we love him, because he first loved us. Why do you love Jesus? Because he first loved us. Not because he died for me on the cross. He loved me first, and then he died on the cross. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Those are the pictures that come to my brain when I read this book. I belong to him. He set his desires towards me one day, beginning of time, and said, someday I'm going to die for that idiot. Even after everything he said about me. Even knowing after I died for him and he accepted me, what he'll do afterwards. I'm going to do it anyways. How do I not devote myself to that God? How can I not have an intimate spiritual relationship? In a physical relationship, imagine the awkwardness of someone leaning in, thinking you're in, and then you give yourself to someone else. Imagine God, Christ, leaning in towards us in that intimate relationship, and then we go hang out with Satan and serve him for a while. I'm going to go step out with the devil tonight. I'll be back later. I'll see you on Sunday. I mean, that's real, right? I mean, when we decide to forsake Christ and go serve the world, isn't that the same thing as stepping out on your husband or your wife? Isn't that the same? In a physical sense. That spiritually, isn't it the same thing? I think it is. In a spiritual sense, when we give ourselves to the world, we belong to the God of the world for a while. We act like, I know we're bought with a price, I get it, right? But we act like we're not. It's like, probably not cool. We leave God hanging. And in chapter 8, the bride starts out talking. And in verse 3 and 4, she talks to the daughters. And in verse 4, you see something repeated one more time. 8:4. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that stir not up, nor await my love until he please. I left a reference out somewhere. It says that before. Where is it? Yeah, it's in there twice. I lost my reference, but it's there. Trust me. Take my word on it. Or you can read the book. But she says, in verse 4, 8:4, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you stir not up, nor await my love until he please. You can do a lot with that. But Christ is not sleeping. Just saying, he's not sleeping. We will not disturb him. But I did. 3:5, that could be right. I thought I could have sworn I had it written down here. Yeah, I'll take that. Okay, so it's the third time it shows up, though. So you got to pay attention. He's not sleeping. We won't disturb him. This is why it breaks down. That's why when I put my God box out and I cram God into it, he breaks my box. I can't put him in it, so I don't try to put God in the box anymore. He's bigger than my box. There's not a chance we'll disturb Christ. His desire is towards us. He wants to hear from us. Just don't talk. You kind of leave him hanging. You don't want to talk to him because it's hard to talk to Christ and then go step out with the devil for date night. And then come back on Sunday and say, hey, how's it going? He said, how's that work in a relationship? It just doesn't work in a physical relationship. I don't see how it could work in a spiritual relationship. Romans 13:11 is what this reminded me of. And that knowing the time that now is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believe. We're the ones sleeping. He's not sleeping. We are. We shouldn't be sleeping. Time's running out. Back in the garden, when God came walking along that day, he found Adam and Eve hiding from him. When Christ comes back, we can't hide from him. But what if we're sleeping? I mean, I know I'm not saying it's nighttime and we're sleeping. What if we're literally sleeping on the job, not doing the things he's equipped us to do? I think you wind up feeling just like Adam and Eve did that day and want to hide. But you can't. Chapter 8, verse 5, got the daughters talking. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? The daughters. I raised thee up under the apple tree. This is the brought. Now, in the last part of that verse, the bridegroom is talking. Now, there's a nice picture. It sure seems to point to God, to me. I raised thee up under the apple tree. There thy mother brought thee forth. There she brought thee forth that very day. Like I raised thee up. I mean, that could be a picture of God to me. But it's hard because the type breaks like every other verse. So go with it if you want. But it reminds me of a garden, a tree being raised up, and the mother that bare thee, and the birth, and all those things. Under the apple tree where you were born. Now, here's the greatest verse in the entire Bible about how stupid commentators are. Verse 8, we have a little sister, and she hath no breast. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for? Verse 9, if she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver, and if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. This is the brothers talking. Really? Okay. Why isn't it the third cousins? Why isn't it the next door neighbors? Why isn't it the garbage collector? It has to be the brothers. I don't know. They say it very authoritatively, so it must be true. I find nothing to prove that. So I'll go with the patterns that the Bible gives us. We have a little sister. They're all daughters. If they were all daughters, wouldn't they call themselves sisters? I think it's the bride. It's the daughters talking. In verses 10 through 12, the bride's talking. Verse 13, the bridegroom's talking, and the book ends with the bride talking. Make haste, my beloved, be thou like to a roe or to a young hart upon the mountain of spices. She said those words before. That's the end of the book. So that's how I see it. Strange book. Doesn't mention God. It doesn't mention the Lord. It doesn't mention the church, but it makes you think about it. It gives you some vague pictures of them. You can trace them in as long as you want. I don't care. It mentions Israel one time in chapter 3, verse 7. That's it. I think it gives us pictures of things that look familiar. And if there's one thing to take away from it that you can bank on, is that there should be a personal relationship between you and Christ. You and your beloved. You are his and he is yours. His desire is toward us. Our desire should be towards him. We shouldn't be seen with anybody else. If anyone asks us where he is, we should know. If anyone asks us who he is, we should be able to tell them in detail to convince them, even the skeptics, right? These weren't like atheist idiots like me. They were questioning, who is this guy? Let's go get another one. You can't find that one, go get another one. Oh, well, you're an idiot. That's not what they said to me. I was an idiot. That's not what they said. There's a bride-groom relationship going on in this book. It's a sexual book that is not the relationship that we have with Christ. Period. The Old Testament's physical pictures, spiritual principles. So we need to be careful when we make analogies between the book and the church. The book, the bride and the church, the king and Christ, or God, because it breaks down every time you look around. It breaks down. Now, every type of Christ breaks down. It didn't break down like every other verse. Okay, like Solomon's type of Christ, type of the Antichrist. So even the types break down. David's a type of Christ. Yeah, no, but not when he killed Uriah the Hittite, right? So I get all that, but when something is so inconsistent, it's hard to make that up. God bless. I'm not saying there's no reference at all. I'm not saying there's no tie between the New Testament and the Old Testament with the church and bride. And then there's all kinds of pictures there, undoubtedly. And there's probably, definitely, a lot more in the book that I don't get. But I'm sure there's way more in here that I don't get than I get. I can honestly say that to myself because I've looked at this book all week. I've looked at it more than just all week. I've looked at this for a long time, and the thing stands for itself. It is just a letter of a man to a woman, a poem, a love letter, a man to a woman. God said, this is going in my book, so I need to know it. He wrote it to someone out of 1,000 wives and concubines. He wrote this about one woman. It may be the virtuous woman. I mean, Queen of Sheba, because, well, she's black, right? Okay, it just doesn't say that, though. Like, I try to stick with the Bible as literally as I can until I must allegorize it. So first literal, and then, okay, it can't literally be that. What is it? Right? There's just some things I'll never understand until I get the mind of Christ out in eternity. It doesn't mean I skip over the book, right? The hard parts, I don't skip over the hard parts because it's there for a reason. There's only 66 books in the Bible, and God said this is one of them. So we should be pretty familiar with it. It would be really hard to tell God on that day that I knew it was impossible for me to understand, so I just skipped it. I really couldn't get my head around it and preach out of it, so I skipped it. I didn't skip it. I'll try to come up with a message on Sunday. I have no idea what that'll be, so pray for me. And let's pray. Father, we just thank you again for being with us tonight. Letting us open up this book. Lord, I pray that we would learn something from